And this one is. Where does it say where it's on? We're testing. What's the audience? It doesn't hear. Welcome, everyone. If you can hear me, try to find a seat. We have more chairs, but there are 3 on the front row. Well, I think the program has begun because you're getting distracted by the scenes over here, but welcome everyone to the Montreat Town Hall, one of our very first Bearwise informational meetings. There was one 6 years ago. I'm Grace Nichols, Chair of the Land Care Committee, and we as a Land Care with the 8 entities represent the college, the town, the conference center, and other entities within the Wilderness Committee. So welcome, and know that we are wanting to engage you and educate you in our bears in the wild. I am very happy to announce that we now have a representation of Arrington Cox being a liaison and being the chair of Bearwise. And Bearwise is now going to be attached to one of our many other activities and projects that we have going on land care, Firewise, accessible trails, projects with children in the wilderness, trail clubs. We have so much going on within our town. And this is the one organization under the auspices of the town that gives everyone a chance to be together and to organize together and be a family. Many people in the public don't recognize that the town, conference center, and the college all share the properties. And then, of course, you, the property owners. And I'd like to thank Mason Blake and Tom Whitmer, who are the 2 town commissioners coordinating some ordinances and talking in the coming months. And at the end, before we have public comments, Tom or Mason or both would just like to make a quick comment related to town. But thank you again for coming. And we are wanting now to represent, I want to present Arrington Cox, the new member of the Land Care Committee.
Thank you, Gracie. So obviously, this is all going to be about bears. Okay. But before I introduce our guest speaker, I want you all to meet my friend Fred. Now, my friend Fred lives in my yard on Virginia Road. And, you know, the walkers that come up the road will get a good reminder and sometimes a really great surprise as Fred moves around the yard. But it's a reminder of how fortunate we are to share life in here in Montreat with these wonderful creatures. However, it's also really important to remember that they are wild things. They were here before we were, and we are living in their world. So our speaker is going to talk to us about how to safely respect, honor, and celebrate that wildness. It's all about becoming bear-wise. Ashley Hobbs is an assistant black bear fur-bearing biologist for Wildlife Management Division of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. She's no stranger to Montreat, so let's give her a welcome back. Ashley?
All right, guys. Like she said, my name is Ashley Hobbs. I'm the assistant black bear biologist for the state of North Carolina, but I am relatively local. I live in South Asheville, so it's not too far for me to get over here. I moved to Buncombe County for a very specific reason that we're going to dive into today. But I'm happy to be here today. If we can go to the next slide. Today, we're going to talk about Bearwise and how we can be Bearwise in our communities. So it's very new program, relatively new program, and certainly new to North Carolina as well, but it's been so well received that it's expanding rapidly. And we'll talk about that a little bit more today. Next slide, please. So we'll start out by talking about black bears in general, specifically our bears here in North Carolina. Then we'll talk about what the heck is Bearwise and how do we be Bearwise around Montreat. Then we'll talk about bear encounters because those are questions that always come up. What do I do if I see a bear? And we'll wrap it up with plenty of time for questions and answers. I don't have anywhere to be tonight, so you got me, okay? You got me for a while at least. I do have to go to sleep at some point though, okay? So we'll wrap that up with plenty of time for questions and answers. So because of that, I ask people, if you do have more of a clarifying type question, feel free to raise your hand. We can address that as we go. But more specific scenarios that you've encountered or you have questions about, let's save those till the end so that we can be respectful of everyone's time. Just in case someone needs to get out of here this evening, we can kind of keep things moving through and they can get all of the content. So let's go to the next slide and dive right in. So how many bears do we have here in North Carolina? A lot. If you look at the blue here on this map of the Southeast, you'll see a big blue swatch through the Smokies, cutting through our mountain region of the state. About 8,000 bears through that area. Then you also see a big swatch of blue out on the coast as well. We have about 12,000 bears, we think, maybe more. We're doing a census currently out on the coast. So does that surprise anyone that we have more bears on the coast than here in the Smokies? Yeah, that usually surprises people. We're very fortunate to have one of the only coastal bear populations. Not only that, but to have such a significant coastal bear population. So how big are these guys getting? Pretty big. Everybody always asks, these guys are just a few months old. Usually they're going to be born in their dens around January into mid-February. By April, they are up and running with mom outside of the den, and they won't really return as soon as they get up and take off. So these guys have probably been out of the den for a month or two at this point. They were hit by vehicles, in case you're wondering. These guys are taxidermied. So come check them out at the end. You can see on there that they have these big satellite dish ears. You can see their nose, you can see their claws. All of that is original. So how big are they getting? Pretty big, like I said. We actually had the world record black bear come out of North Carolina. Yes, I said world record. He was 880 pounds when he was harvested by a hunter. So that's well above the average for an interior grizzly bear. So large bears, and he came from the coast, from Craven County. Out there tends to be a more temperate climate, longer growing seasons for their natural foods. Also a lot of agriculture out there, which is also a food source, things like corn, soybeans, things like that. And a lot of swamp and marshland out there, which is excellent habitat for a bear. So they grow big out on the coast of North Carolina. Out here in the mountains, our bears are going to be a bit smaller. On average, our bears are, for males, somewhere around 200 to 250. Females will be smaller, more around 150 to 175 on average. Certainly, we can still have those big boys running around on occasion. And do note that the males are larger than the females when they reach adulthood. Talking a little bit about their senses there. Does anybody have trouble seeing at a distance? I do. I don't know what that's called. Nearsighted, farsighted, I don't know. If you can't see things far away, you have similar eyesight to a bear. So a lot of people will tell me, they'll call me, they say, Ashley, I had this bear come into my yard and it stood up on its hind legs and it growled at me. It was aggressive. And I say, I don't think it was being aggressive. I think it was being curious. These guys can't see you from a great distance. So I ask people, if you are gardening, you're bent down, pulling weeds in the garden, and you think maybe you saw a bear off in the distance, what are you going to do? Turn around, stand up, get a better look, right? That's exactly what these bears are doing too. That's a curious behavior. They're trying to figure out what that is off in the distance. They're also using that standing up behavior to engage their other senses. So they're hearing, again, you see on these guys, they've got these big satellite dish ears. They can rotate those around and hear directionally. So they know exactly what direction that sound is coming from and how far away it is. They can also hear at frequencies much higher than you or I could hear as well. So for that reason, we tell people to make noise as they're out walking out in the yard, things like that, so that the bear can hear you coming. That's because they have a great sense of hearing. They also have a really great homing instinct. Black bears know where home is, kind of like a homing pigeon, if you've ever heard of those. So if you pick up a bear and you take it away, it's going to make a beeline right back for that exact spot where you picked it up. We've had some instances where studies have been done where bears have been collared, taken multiple states away, and they've made a beeline right back from that same spot where they were picked up. So for that reason, we don't relocate bears here in our state. A couple other reasons on top of that is our state is 90% privately owned. So we don't have a lot of spaces where we can go put bears, where we're not putting them in your backyard. The other thing is, you see we have a significant bear population as well. So we would be putting them up and putting them in another bear's backyard. And these guys are solitary, they're territorial. So it's not necessarily fair to the bear, and that bear comes right back. Even if that bear didn't come right back, oftentimes we see that if humans don't change their behavior that brought that bear to the backyard per se, another bear is going to come in and also get into that garbage can or that bird feeder. So we focus more on changing human behavior rather than moving bears around the state in an ineffective manner. So that's a question I get asked a lot. Hey, will you come get your bear? Please take it somewhere else. It's like, ma'am, I have nowhere to put this bear. So in case you're wondering, we will not relocate bears in North Carolina. Last thing I want to talk about is their sense of smell, because this is what they rely on every day, all day. These guys are eating machines, so they use their sense of smell to seek out sources of food. I'm going to pass this around here. Sorry for those of you that are online. This is plastic. It's not gross. I mean, aside from maybe if someone has some gross hands. But if you look inside, there are lots and lots of channels in there. Got it? And what that does is it increases the surface area inside of their nostrils so they can better process smells. So when they breathe in, the scent particles have more room to stick, so to speak, and they can process those smells, and they can smell things from over a mile away. So they also put it at 10 miles away at some estimates and 25 miles away at some of the longer estimates. But certainly if a bear can smell your trash can from a mile away, that's pretty significant, right? So if we kind of put that in context of a human, that's hundreds of times better than our sense of smell, and it's 7 times better than the sense of smell of a bloodhound. So we're talking about an incredible sense of smell, and they again use that to find food resources. So that's why bears know when your trash day is. That's why the bears know where the bird feeders are. Maybe they haven't encountered it before, but they can smell it and seek it out from great distance. So we'll go to the next slide here. You see my big bear here. Next slide, please. So what are they eating? Bears are omnivores, and they're also considered generalists. So these guys will eat just about anything whenever it's available to them. It's a good rule of thumb. A lot of people will say, well, I put diapers in my trash can and the bear still went through it. They'll try anything once. Same thing with kitty litter, ammonia, all these different scent deterrents that people, find on the internet. They don't necessarily dissuade a bear because they are opportunists. If there's trash there, they're going to check it out. But naturally, bears are going to be eating a lot of plants, about 80% plants, a little bit of insects, and then a little bit of animals tossed in there as well. So in the spring, when the bears are really getting up and active, they're going to be targeting those new roots and shoots that are available to them. Certainly insect larvae at that time of year as well. If you see a bear digging around in your backyard, they might be going after a wasp or a hornet's nest in the ground. That's pretty common for them. Same thing with things like bees and ants as well. If you've ever had a bear target your hot tub cover, that's because when that, I forget the name of the chemical, but that vinyl that the hot tub cover is made out of, when it breaks down and that foam inside breaks down over time, it releases the same chemical that ants do. And the bears can sniff that out and they think they're looking for ants, Really, it's just your hot tub cover. So very expensive mistake on their part. So again, spring and summer, or excuse me, in the spring, they're going to be eating those new roots and shoots, definitely some insects as well. Usually the fawns start dropping around that time. They'll certainly take advantage of those as well before they get up and running. Easy opportunity for them to get some protein. Once we get a little bit farther into the year and the soft mass, those berry species come into season, they'll target those. And once we get into the fall, this time of year when the acorns start to drop, they're going to be targeting acorns almost exclusively. Again, naturally, this is what they're doing. So they're going to be eating anywhere from 23 out of 24 hours a day right now, trying to pack on pounds for the winter when there's not a lot of food resources available to them. So spring and summer, they're consuming 3,000 to 5,000 calories per day. In the fall, right now, 20,000 calories per day. So they're trying to meet these really high calorie goals each day. Can we go to the next slide? Which is why they take advantage of some other options. So bird feeders, trash, garbage, pet food are all super high calorie, dense items that they can find right around our homes. Oops. So here I have a 7-pound bird feeder, holds 7 pounds of that classic black sunflower seed mix you find at Walmart or whatever. Anybody have a guess at how many calories this has? Right, 20,000 calories right here in this single bird feeder. So that's a day's worth of calories for a bear right now. That's a week's worth of calories for a bear in the spring and summer. And most of the time we have more than one bird feeder in our backyard, right? Most of the time we have bird feeders and our neighbors have bird feeders and our neighbors' neighbors have bird feeders, which means we've essentially set up some bear buffets. We're inviting them right up close to our homes, right next to our garages, where our grandkids are outside, where our pets are outside, and we're continuously filling those up. So we're feeding them and rewarding them for coming to our homes over and over and over again. And that's where we tend to get into trouble, both bears and people, is because we're inviting them in and they're going to come because that's an easy calorie resource for them. So let's go to the next slide. So we've seen this sort of situation lead to these results. So this is Buncombe County versus the entire, all 99 counties in North Carolina. On average, Buncombe County receives about 42% of the calls about bears for the entire state each year. Buncombe County alone. So we have about 100 counties in North Carolina. So these are anything from, gosh, everyone has a Ring camera nowadays. It's anything from, I saw a bear on my Ring camera at 3 a.m. What do I do? To there's a bear in my kitchen. What do I do? And everything in between. So we're getting a significant amount of calls specifically from our part of the mountains. Some of that is because we have a lot of new people moving here, especially in the past couple years, right? And they've never had to interact with bears before. They've never had to coexist with black bears. And now they have a steep learning curve when that bear shows up on their back porch at their bird feeder, right? The other thing is we have a whole lot of tourism going on. So we're trying to educate people on how to coexist with bears who are only here for 2 or 3 days. Then we get a whole new batch of people. So that's a big challenge for us to educate people. The other part of it is we have more bears. So we have more bears with a growing bear population out here in the mountains and a growing human population. No wonder they're coming together more often over the years. So this is a very common scenario that we're seeing throughout the mountains in particular. Now, one interesting thing is we don't really get this number of calls out on the coast. It's mostly here in the mountains, which is interesting. I think it has to do with the human population. I think it has to do a bit with people's tolerance of bears or awareness of bears. Maybe they know what to do when they see a bear when they're out on the coast. But there's more bears out on the coast and we're getting the calls here in Buncombe County. So we know it's a people problem. We'll go to the next slide. So because this is happening, this sort of scenario is happening all over the Southeast. Gatlinburg is a great example of, a lot more human bear interactions, especially with tourism thrown in there. So all the bear biologists got together in the Southeast and we said, well, what are we going to do about this? And one thing that was noted is that there's a lot of resources out there, but there's not a lot of vetted resources. So it's a lot of well-meaning people who are putting together information that may not be actually true. Maybe it worked for one person, but doesn't work for most people. So we came up with Bearwise, and Bearwise shares science-based information. So you're not getting those old wives' tales thrown in there. No one's telling you to put cayenne pepper in your bird seed to keep the bears out. We only use things that have been proven by science to be effective. The other thing is we keep it consistent so that you're not getting a different message on how to coexist with bears in Florida than you are here in North Carolina. If you own a beach house and a mountain house, we're going to tell you the same exact thing on how to coexist with bears, no matter where you're at. So there's a little less guessing going on. So consistent science-based information. We want you to be proactive. We want to be able to teach people to prevent conflicts from happening before they actually happen. So secure your trash before the bear figures out that you have a good food resource there, for example. We also want to help people resolve the problems that they're already experiencing. So if you do have a bear already coming to your trash can, we want to give you a couple different ways that you can try to secure that trash so that you can kind of break that cycle of that bear coming back and getting rewarded with that trash each time. We also want to encourage communities to come together and coexist with bears. We can do that through the Bearwise basics, which we're going to get through here in a moment. But when a community comes together, we provide, they become recognized as a Bearwise community. And so they get special signage. They have special systems in place on how to deal with bears and trash, bears coming through the community, things like that. We actually have a couple communities in the Black Mountain area, one over by the golf course and one in the downtown area, that it's really proven very effective. Bearwise.org, also at the bottom there, is a wonderful resource. We have tons of flyers on there that you can download for free, give to your neighbors. You can also share them via email or next door, things like that. Lots and lots of great information on there. So I encourage you to check out that website. Next one. So I mentioned earlier, we have the 6 Bearwise basics. These are the 6 things that we've boiled it down to, that if you can do these in your community and get everybody on board, you can effectively be preventative of having conflicts with bears. You can also use some of these to resolve some of the conflicts you're already experiencing, like bears and trash, such a common one, right? So let's dive into these. You go to the next slide. Thank you. So the first one's kind of a duh. Please don't feed the bears. Please don't approach the bears. Some people view bears as cute, cuddly creatures, and they want them in their yard. They want to interact with them. Some people put them on YouTube and make money off of the bears in their yards. And then you have other people who are terrified of bears. They see a bear on their Ring camera at night, and they are terrified to go outside. And then we have everybody in between. So we want you to respect bears. We don't want you to be afraid of bears. Please don't love them too much. Just give them a healthy respect, because they are wild animals at the end of the day. So we can keep them wild by avoiding feeding them. So obviously, please don't intentionally place food to attract a bear to your community. We do have people that do that, but please don't. It is dangerous not only for the people, but for the bear as well. As I told you, we don't relocate bears. So if there is a bear that becomes a public safety issue, if it does get to that point, we may have to lethally remove that bear. And that is the last thing that we want to do. So if we do get to this kind of situation where we're seeing a safety issue pop up, we're going to go in there with education, and we're going to try to change people's behavior to change the bear's behavior. So if you do see someone that's intentionally feeding or intentionally walking up to bears, usually they go hand in hand. Please let us know. I'll have a number at the very end. We'd like that information just so we can, again, talk to that person, educate that person, and maybe explain to them why that's dangerous, not only for them, but for the bear as well. Next slide, please. Number 2 is secure your food, garbage, and recycling. So remember, their sense of smell is 7 times better than a bloodhound. So they know what pizza toppings you had last night, just based on that box you put in your trash can. They have an incredible sense of smell. So keep that in mind as you go out throughout your day. You don't have to be paranoid about it, but just have a little common sense. So if you are, for example, eating on the back deck, perfectly fine. But don't leave your food on the back deck and then walk inside and talk on the phone for 30 minutes and then end up with a bear on your picnic, right? So just kind of be mindful about those things as you go through your day. Also your vehicle, never leave food in your vehicle. Each year we see bears total cars over something as small as a Tic Tac. Again, they have that incredibly keen sense of smell and that high food drive, and that can lead them to developing that behavior of opening up car doors. If you'll hit the next button. So you'll see this guy in Gatlinburg opens his car door just as you or I would. I wouldn't open it any different.
Get out of there. No, no. Hey.
Whoever the that is. Oh.
Get out of there.
So these people got very lucky because that car door didn't close behind them. I mean, these are big animals. So when they get inside the car and the car starts rocking a little bit, oftentimes that door closes behind them and the interior of that car is just donezo at that point. So just be mindful if you're eating McDonald's on the way home, you drop a French fry into the seat, pick it up. Don't leave the snacks and the candy in your car. If you got a car seat, good luck. No, but do just try to be mindful of those things. The best thing you can do is lock your doors and keep your windows rolled up. I know in a lot of our communities, we feel safe. We love our neighbors, and that's great. Trust your neighbors, don't trust the bears. Roll up your windows, keep your vehicle locked at all times, or inside the garage, something like that, where the doors close behind them, because that is something we see every year. The next thing is garbage and recycling, which is probably one of the bigger ones when it comes to bear calls that we get. In Bearwise communities, we ask that people secure their garbage and recycling. Some communities do this through, they have garages, so they all agree to keep their trash can in the garage until the morning of collection. Or if you are on a dumpster system, you take your trash to the dumpster, you don't have a collection. I have communities like that they all agree straight to the dumpster. It doesn't sit in the back of the truck, doesn't sit, outside the home. Trash goes straight from your home to the dumpster. And then I have other communities that have come together and purchased bear resistant carts as well. So when it comes to becoming a Bearwise community, there's a wide spectrum of how you can kind of tick that box, and we can talk about what's best for Montreat in that situation. But one of the requirements is that you secure trash because it is such an attractant for bears. Again, right here, right now, though, if you take nothing else away today, except for keeping your trash secured in a shed, in a garage, something like that, and then putting out on collection day, never the night before. If you can put it out a little later in the day, closer to your collection time, even better. Just take that home with you. Free advice, but that's probably the best advice you can get when you're working with trash. Do the next slide, please. So these are going to be 2 videos showing bear resistant trash cans. These are commercially available options that you can maybe find at a Waste Pro, an Ace Pro, Ace Hardware, or a Lowe's, something like that. So this first one, we'll play that video. So you'll see this stays locked, but the lid can be pried open. So that bear can still get the reward for coming up to the trash can, right? So that one, you can click the next button.
The new bear.
That one didn't quite work. This next one, however, has a reinforced lid and a locking mechanism. So it works great. That bear can use its teeth, it can use its claws, it can shove it around, but it can't access that trash. It can't get that food reward. So something like this can go a long way in helping break that behavior of going after trash in people's communities. So that one worked great. This one up here, I encourage you to come take a look afterwards. It has a reinforced lid and a locking mechanism. This is also the Cadillac of bear resistant garbage cans. This one has a gravity latch on it. So when the trash truck comes along and turns it up on its end, 180 Yeah, 180, 90 degrees, whatever. When it flips it upside down, the trash comes out, and when it's flipped back, that lid automatically locks again. So this trash can is never unlocked. If you would like to try a locking can in your home today, for example, you may have to unlock it while it's at the curb on collection day. So something to consider. This one's going to be very expensive because you get that fancy mechanism. But there's a lot of different locking mechanisms out there. Just find something that locks. Find something with a sturdy lid that can't be pried open. Also on bearwise.org, there are examples of how you can install locks onto your current trash can as well. So there's a lot of different ways to secure trash. Bearwise.org can kind of point you in what's going to be the best option for you. We'll go to the next slide. Number 3. Just fighting words, but I'm ready. No. So remember, bears are about easy calories. So 20,000 calories per day right now is what they're trying to target. And that bird feeder has 20,000 calories. So you're going to be seeing a lot of bear activity right now as they're gaining fat for the winter. They're never really going to be in full hibernation mode. Bears in the Southeast undergo what we call a torpor or a false hibernation. So these bears are going to be up and moving around in the middle of January on a warm day, February, all through until spring. They're never going to really go unconscious in a cave like maybe think from movies and things like that. So it's not uncommon to see bears in the winter. So we ask people to remove their bird feeders entirely. There's also this sort of sentiment that bears are only active at night. And has anyone seen a bear during the day? Yeah. So we know our bears around here, they're pretty used to people, they're pretty food conditioned, so they're going to be up and moving around at lunchtime. So when it comes to bird feeders, we ask that you just secure them all together. We don't use bird feeders. They do, again, attract those bears right up to your home, invite them, and then reward them for coming up close to your home. So by removing that attractant, that food resource, we can kind of break that cycle. The bears are safer, the people are safer, everybody goes home happy. They do have plenty of food out there. In the Southeast here, we're not necessarily food restricted. Even in a poor mast year, the bears can get enough nutrition. You're not going to find a starving bear around here because they don't have food available. So they are fine to go target their natural foods. Let them do that. Secure those bird feeders. If you have to have a bird feeder, if you're just that person, put your bird feeder out when bears are less active. Remember, they're always going to be active throughout the year, but usually if you put your bird feeder out in November, bring it in again in March, you can get away with it. I tell people if you experience bear activity during that time, bring that feeder in for 2 weeks until that bear can move on and then try again. It's kind of a good rule of thumb. When you have those bird feeders up, you may be tempted to hang them really, really high. Put them in a tree, put them on your deck. Bears can climb up on your deck. They can climb up those fence posts just like they can a tree. They're really great climbers. So if you have a bird feeder on your deck, on your balcony, a bear can certainly still access that. Bears are also happy to access the spillage that's on the ground when all those little squirrels and chipmunks and birds feed and they spill it on the ground. So that's still attracting a bear to your yard, even if you can hang it up super high. There's just so many other ways to see birds in your yard. Things like nest boxes or bird baths are great alternatives that aren't an attractant for a bear. Pollinator gardens as well. I can't stress those enough. Planting native flowers in your yard is a great way to get a higher quantity of birds and a greater variety of birds as well if you're a big bird watcher. So just look at some other alternatives besides the bird feeders. We'll go to the next slide. Number 4 is pet food. Usually this is going to be cat food. Those are usually our outdoor animals, but certainly some people have outdoor dogs as well. When you are feeding your dogs or your cats outside, even some small livestock as well, make sure that you give them just what they need. Sometimes we're tempted to give them a little extra, so we don't have to go out and feed them again. But if they're not eating all of that food, then a bear might come along and finish that off for them. And where do we usually put that food? Pretty close to the house, right? So again, we're attracting a bear up to our house, rewarding them for coming to our house. So bring in the leftovers and then any sort of livestock feed, that big bag of dog food, cat food, store that inside in a locking shed somewhere where the bears can't access it. Next slide, please. Number 5, it's often overlooked, but if you have had a problem with your grill, it's hard to break that cycle. So if you think about it, when you open up the lid of your grill, you smell the cheeseburgers from last week, right? And it's a pretty strong smell for us. So imagine how strong that smell is for the bears as well. They can smell it from over a mile away. So some of these bears will target grills, particularly the really dirty ones that have a stronger scent. So we tell people just after you use your grill, scrape it down, clean it off really well. You can crank up that heat to burn off the bits. You use your little scraper to get everything off, and then pull out that drip tray too. Don't toss the drip tray in the yard because that just moves the smell 5 feet to the left, right? Take it inside, and with anything that you have that's really stinky, smelly, you can stick it in the freezer until it's time for your trash to go out or time for you to go to the dump. If you have chicken scraps, any sort of dinner scraps, anything that's stinky, put it in the freezer, put it out when the trash goes out. And then just store your grill if you can in a bear resistant location. Shed or a garage is a great option. Next slide. Number 6 is something you guys are probably already doing. And this is another requirement that we have in a Bearwise community, and that's let your neighbors know. My Bearwise communities have special systems in place where they can report a bear incident. So if they have a bear in their bird feeder, for example, they can report that to the community. If they have a bear come up and look in their window, they can report that. And they can get feedback from their community members as well. So we usually have one person assigned to receive those complaints. They can get that person information on how to prevent them from happening in the future. And if it's serious enough, then that person can get in touch with us at the Wildlife Commission so we can do something about it, take appropriate action. But word of mouth is sometimes undervalued. Just let people know so they can walk their dog in the opposite direction. Or maybe they shouldn't be out walking so late at night. It's not such a great idea because bears are super active. Just have those conversations with your neighbors and get really comfortable with talking about that. Of course, next door, Facebook, social media, great options as well. Again, someone can do something as simple as walk their dog in a different route that day to avoid conflict. Next slide, please. So I kind of want to use this slide to wrap this up in a bow for you as why are we doing all of these things in our community? And that's because, again, we're rewarding the bears for hanging around our homes. So when they're hanging around, they're more likely to be hit by a car. Hit the next slide. So here's a map. Hopefully you can see it pretty well, but you'll see that blaring red county out there. That's Buncombe County. We are notorious for bears hit by vehicles, some of the surrounding counties as well. A lot of that is, again, all of our people, all of the attractants we bring in our growing bear population. These bears are getting hit by cars when they're hanging around our neighborhoods in these more developed areas. Next slide, please. They also might become habituated to people. Next slide. So you see these bears came from, they were in Asheville last year. These are actually, I think it was 2, maybe 3 yearlings with an adult female. And at about a year to year and a half old, they've already learned this behavior to try to open a door to enter a home to get food. They've already been rewarded for this behavior. So we're running into this issue where mom is passing on that information of using people for food. And this is where we end up with a public safety issue. This bear, if it continues, is going to snowball that behavior over time. It's only going to get worse if we don't put a stop to it now. So just remember, bears are mostly just traveling through our community. We don't want to give them reasons to stick around, and we can do that by securing attractants. Next slide, please. So we're going to jump into encounters really quickly. We will talk about bear spray for just a moment as well. But I want to ask, what do you think a bear is going to do when they encounter a person? Run, right? Next slide. Keep going. One more. There we go. So they're going to try to get away from you. They'll usually run away. I tell people if you're just seeing bear butts, that's great. That's what I want to see. If you're just seeing their tush as they're running away from you, that's a good bear. They're going to run from you. They're also going to climb. That's their instinct from a very young age, to climb a tree to get away from whatever that dangerous thing is. And they're going to try to hide. It's very likely that you've been out walking, something like that, and you've driven past a bear and you didn't even know it, or you walked past a bear and you didn't know it. They're very quiet in the woods as well. So they're going to run, hide, or climb. Next slide. So they're also big fraidy cats. You see there's a little tabby cat at the bottom of that tree there. So when it comes to the fight or flight end of the spectrum, they're definitely on that flight end. They just want to get away from you. They're a lot different from, like, I think his name is Fred. Fred here. Fred's a grizzly bear. Yes, he is. Okay. Very different from a grizzly bear. So we don't have grizzly bears here in our state. So you would treat them very differently than you would a black bear. With a black bear, they're very cautious. They just want to get away from you. So that's a good rule of thumb, is if you see a bear, it's going to go its way, you're going to go your way. So we'll go to the next slide. So if you encounter a bear, it says in the woods, but really if you are walking the dog, walking down your street, you're in your backyard, something like that, you see a bear at a distance, just stop. Don't approach the bear anymore. If that bear is still acting like a bear, take a picture and then back away in the opposite direction. What you don't want to do is run in the opposite direction. These guys do eat meat. They do, chase things. They have that innate instinct. You don't want to trigger that. So calmly back up in the opposite direction. If you have a dog with you, that dog should be on a leash at all times. You're again, same thing, back away in the opposite direction, you and your dog. You and Fluffy go home, that bear will go its own way. Everybody goes home happy. If you were in that situation, you're backing away, and that bear continues to approach you. That's when you're going to stop. You're going to get big and scary. You're going to make the craziest noises that you can. And oftentimes that's enough. That bear will turn tail and run away. Things like this, I have a signal horn here. There's a much smaller version of this as well. You can carry in your pocket, especially if you're out walking. These can be great for scaring away a bear. I'm not going to move that one, but it's pretty loud noise maker up here. If you want to try it after, be my guest. But anything that's loud and scary, what's going to work best though is your voice. They know what a human voice is, and they have that instinct to stay away from the human sounds. So just by yelling the classic, "Hey bear," that works great. And it's free and you always have it on you, right? Yeah. So if that bear continues to approach you after you got loud, big, and crazy, that's when you want to look into pepper spray. Specifically, we're going to talk about bear spray here. If you have the keychain version, that's great for keeping away creepy people. That's not going to work against a bear. It works very differently. This stuff sprays wide, it sprays far, and it's much more potent. So you need to have bear spray. We have a couple different ways you can carry it up here. We have a bicycle attachment. We have something to store it in while you're, going to and from in the car, so that just in case it did go off, an accident happens, you're not spraying your whole car. And then I have this, which I carry with me. Never had to use bear spray, but I carry this with me if I am moving around in the woods by myself. Goes on my belt loop, works great. So any of those options are great. The key is just to have your bear spray accessible to you. If it's in the bottom of your backpack, in the bottom of your purse, it's not going to help you, right? You're going to have to fumble to get it. You can't tell the bear, "Hey, wait, woo, hold on. Get your bear spray and then go." You got to have it accessible. The other thing is you want to learn how to use your bear spray. The first time that you familiarize yourself with it shouldn't be when you actually need to use it. This orange tab up here is a safety. Usually you can hold the finger loop right here, take it off with your thumb, and then you're ready to spray. So you want to kind of practice taking that safety off a couple times so you know how it works. This one right here is actually a training can, which you can get online if you want to practice. If you are maybe a little iffy about bear spray, and if that's for you, you can practice, see how it sprays, see how it works, and then get a real can for yourself. Generally, I want to emphasize these guys are scared of you. They just want to get away from you. So the chances of you being in a situation where you need to use bear spray are slim. And I don't want you to be scared to go out and walk your dog, scared to garden in the backyard. Just have some common sense, make some noise, and know what to do if you encounter that bear. Back away in the opposite direction slowly and go on about your day. So we'll go to the next one. So here is a video of a bear in a backyard. This is kind of a good normal average encounter with a bear. Good example of that. You'll see she is going to get big and scary when she comes around the corner and she's pretty close to that bear, and that bear hightails it and runs off.
You shan't all the bears here. Let me go in your office because he might come after me.
Down right now. Yo, no, down.
So if a bear continued to approach, that's about how that should go. The other thing I want to emphasize is it's okay to scare a bear out of your backyard. It's okay to set those boundaries. And in fact, I encourage that. It's kind of like, you know, if you've got a toddler in the house and they're reaching up on the stove, you're going to tell them, hey, you can't do this because this isn't safe. And you stop that behavior, you discourage that behavior. Please do the same thing with the bears. Because again, when they're hanging around our homes, when they're too used to people and they see us as food, that's when we have the issue where the bears are no longer safe, we're no longer safe. So again, set those boundaries, scare them off if you see them in the backyard, keep them moving through. Don't let them sit around for 3 hours. You know, take your picture, scare them off, let them keep going. Next slide, please. So here I just want to leave you with some good information. I have the NC Wildlife Helpline up here. This is not only for bears, but for all species of wildlife. It is manned by a biologist Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. There's also an email up there. Just in case you need to send a picture or a video along with your question, leave them a message and they will get back to you within a business day. I also put my email up there as well, in case you think there's another opportunity, people need this information, or you have a question afterwards, just let me know, send me an email. And then of course, bearwise.org. I can't recommend that enough. So at this time, we'll open it up to questions, unless we have, yeah. Oh, hi.
Good afternoon or evening, I guess it is at this point in time. What's that? I'm Tom Widmer. I'm on the town council and just want to tell you a couple things. First of all, thank you to the Land Care Committee for getting this together. We have partnered with them on this entire bear issue that we've been dealing with for about the last 9 months. And we're thankful to them for their effort that isn't going to stop today with the Bearwise presentation. They're going to continue to work under Arrington's leadership to make Montreat a Bearwise community as well. What I'd like to do is invite each of you to a town forum. You'll hear more about it in the Montreat Minute as well as elsewhere. That will occur on Monday, October the 17th, about 4 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, at 6:30. We at that meeting are going to be discussing some of the issues that we have encountered toward the end of the year with the bear hunters. We had some dog issues. We had some hunter issues as well that scared a lot of us. And as a result of that, the town council, as well as the staff and many others, have been busy working on some procedures, ordinances, and other kinds of things to protect us as citizens. At that time, we will share with you what those ordinances are. We'll share with you what your rights and responsibilities are as residents. And we'll also talk about what the town has done in addition to the ordinances to provide further protections for you. So keep your eyes open, write it down now. That's Monday, the 17th, right here in this room at 6:30. Thanks so much.
So yeah, we'll open it up to questions. Josh, would you mind flashing that phone number, that last slide up there again? Thank you. Yeah, so I'll give you guys some more time to write that information down. Great to have on the fridge or in your phone ready to go when you need it. Again, all wildlife issues can go through there and we will get back to you within a business day. So if we have questions, I believe we need to come up to the microphone to ask those. Yes, sir, you can come up. Sure.
And so all you've got is right there.
Sure. So he said he taped an air horn to his hiking stick so that it was accessible. It was in front of him and ready to go. So he said that was a really great tip someone gave him. Yeah, hummingbird feeder will have about 2,000 calories to it. So still a high calorie food resource for a bear, kind of like hanging up some Kool-Aid off your back porch. Yes, ma'am. It should be. So she said, why is it not illegal to, can we pass around a microphone maybe? She said that's why it's not illegal to feed bears in North Carolina. Part of it is because we do have baiting options for our hunters. So sometimes those can get conflated, but certainly we are always working and striving to have a statewide feeding ordinance unrelated to hunting, so that those people in downtown Asheville, where obviously they're not putting out peanuts to hunt the bears, they just want to take pictures of the bears, we can address that when that becomes a public safety issue. So it is something that we're working on, and right now at the state level, maybe we'll get some traction soon, but we would love to implement something like that on the Montreat level, on a smaller scale, so that we can kind of piece together these areas where everybody's being more bear wise.
Hi. Is it not advisable to plant edible plants like a raspberry bush or apple tree?
Yeah, something like that's definitely going to attract the bears. So stay away from those if possible. If you already have them, or if you just really love them, you could take some electric fencing and fence off that area. Electric fencing is a great resource. A lot of people are scared of it, but it is really reasonable to maintain and put in place. And that's just about the only thing that's going to keep a bear out of an area you don't want them. So either don't plant them at all, or if you plant them, plan ahead and put some electric fencing.
Purchased a motion activated sound thing. And I'm using it out in Burke County to keep raccoons away from some grapes. But I was just wondering if you have any experience with it has a adjustable frequency, high frequency, all the way to it sounds like a siren going off really loud. Do you think that would be effective?
No. We've tried several different iterations of those. And what happens is, the bears may encounter it once or twice and be afraid of it. But once they continue to encounter it over time, they become habitual, or they lose their fear of that sound, or the lights too, or sometimes a sprinkler. There's a lot of different iterations. But over time, they become used to it and it becomes ineffective.
So I have another one that has a sprinkler on it. You're saying the sprinkler they don't mind getting wet?
No, probably not, especially if you are if I assume you have some sort of grapes or something you're trying to keep them out of, it sounds like.
Not here. I have some apricots that I'd love to grow, and they're young. Right. But I'm wondering about next spring, what I'm going to be dealing with.
Yeah, if it's a really high valuable food resource, kind of like apricots, apple trees, plum trees, cherry trees are often targeted as well. Sometimes they won't mind getting a little wet, or they won't mind that flashing or that sound to get that high food reward. So it can be dependent on the bear. maybe you could have some luck, but from what we've experienced with people trying those sorts of options, they haven't been effective.
Things that we've experienced is acorns.
Mhm.
And I didn't know this. They need 20,000 calories a day
Mhm.
doing hyperphagia. Oh, I came in late.
That's okay. If you're somebody with a whole bunch of acorns in your backyard, maybe you got one of those big, beautiful oak trees. Something you could get in the habit of is kind of raking them up every weekend. Just trying to minimize what's on the ground. They're still going to crawl up in the trees and try to get them that way. So it may not be super effective, but just try your best to kind of clean up what you can, and so that there's not as much there to attract them.
So my question is about pumpkins and
Mhm.
gourds, which, many of us love to use for decorating outside our front door. Are the bears going to try to eat those?
Yeah. Yeah, they'll definitely, this time of year is when we start getting those Ring camera videos of the bear. The bear took the pumpkin off my porch, and it's like, well, I've had 3 pumpkins this year and they keep taking them. It's like, well, yeah. So yeah, I would advise people not to put out real pumpkins, maybe try a fake pumpkin instead. Just because as they kind of start to break down, especially, they can be, really attractive for a bear.
Someone had told me that bears don't like pumpkin.
I don't know what kind of bears they, no.
I've got a comment too. I'll tell you about talking about your nuts. I've got a wonderful oak tree, but the bear just goes right up there and lounges for
Mhm.
about 3 or 4 hours. So we've gotten to where we have kind of a symbiotic relationship. We let him do it because we can't keep him out of the tree.
Right.
But at the same time, if I see him coming, he doesn't like our air horn.
Okay.
He's gone, but he'll come back. He knows that's a source
Yeah.
of protein. The other thing I was going to tell you is the steel trash cans,
Mhm.
doesn't matter. If you don't secure them somehow.
Exactly.
We had ours bolted to 6 inches of concrete. Our 3-year yearling rocked it down a ravine. It went.
Mhm.
Thankfully, the person here came up and with his summer staff, they brought it back up. We secured it with 2x4s and 6 inches of concrete. He tried it once or twice.
Mhm.
He wouldn't budge. He finally left.
Yeah, that's a great example. I say bearwise.org is a great resource. One thing they mentioned is maybe trying one of these, buying a bear resistant trash can. Another example I mentioned is installing locks on your trash can. Another one is building an enclosure around your trash can. It's going to depend on your situation, your bears, and maybe what's a good option for you personally. So don't be afraid to kind of start with maybe the cheap locks, installing locks, and then kind of work your way up from there. There's a lot of different options out there to explore. So don't give up. Yeah, especially if you've got a big slope on your property. Are we sure it was the, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it can be, especially if you have a big slope there. You can try kind of, if you can't put it in a shed, can't put it in a garage, something like that. You can try, that front metal bar, strapping it to a tree, something like that, so it stays stationary. You're going to have to maybe get a little creative with these guys. They're pretty smart, and they're problem solvers. One thing that we do, you saw that video at the very beginning of that's Uno from the WNC Nature Center. If you're familiar with him, he's a big 500-pound bear. He actually tested this trash can for us to see if it works for black bears. This one's certified for grizzly bears, but grizzly bears kind of go with brute force. They just want to pound it. They want to jump on it and try to open up that trash can. Black bears have a little finesse. They'll use their teeth. They'll use their claws. They'll try different angles. So we've actually opened up a new testing program, and the Nature Center is actually one of the first testing facilities as a part of that program to test bear-resistant products like this trash can to see if they can hold up to a black bear, just because they're so dang smart. Exactly.
He was home
backs up to the Smoky Mountain National Park
Mhm.
and has a hot tub. And it's not a pretty sight. But he has resorted to either shooting the bear with rubber bullets, or he has purchased bullets that have bear mace inside the bullets and he
The
shoots
pepper,
those. Yes.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
that's fine with me. That's a great non-lethal option to pursue, especially if you have a persistent bear and you've tried other methods first, and you're comfortable doing so. Firearm ordinances come into play, all that good stuff. So we'll just put a little asterisk by that option. But yes, for here, yes. But paintball guns, things like that are tools that people can use once they've kind of exhausted those other options.
Actually, I've got a question about bears and dogs.
Mhm.
We had a little dog killed by a bear in broad daylight in the driveway.
Mhm.
The bear had plenty of opportunity to get away from this little dog. Why didn't he? He
Yeah,
had room to run.
So we've got the situation where we have two animals that have kind of evolved alongside each other, bears and canines, we'll say. So these guys have both developed this innate instinct to be defensive towards one another. So that's probably what it is. That even if it's a little yappy dog, if that dog is, barking, yapping, coming at them, they see that as they need to get defensive. Now, sometimes that can go a little farther, and especially with the smaller dog, sometimes they bite off more than they can chew, and they end up taking the brunt of it. But even with something like a Great Dane, we've seen it before as well. Bears and dogs just don't mix. And it's because they have that, they see each other as a threat, so they become defensive. So that's why I mentioned always, always, always have your dog on a leash. Even when I take my dog out in the backyard, I live in Asheville, we got bears everywhere. I'm not risking it. She's like my little kid, she's a member of the family. So I keep her on a leash and I keep her safe. We always check the backyard before we go outside as well. So if you want to have your dog, play fetch in the front yard, something like that, you just have to be hyper aware. If there's been a bear active in the neighborhood that week, maybe you don't play fetch in the backyard that week. Maybe you go for a run instead, or go for a walk instead. Find some other way to exercise your dog. So always, always, always have your dog on a leash, because bears and dogs don't mix because of that evolutionary instinct to defend, see them as a threat, even those little ones. So we do have a great flyer on bearwise.org of specifically about dogs and bears that you can look at and get tons of information, just on, why they don't mix and what you should do when you have your dog out and about.
My dog has an invisible fence, so she won't leave the fence, I don't think, to chase the bear. But the bear might come in. I realize that.
Well, the other thing is dogs can often run through those fences. They're not foolproof, and you don't have control over your dog. If you have your dog on a leash, then you have control over your dog. You can get your dog to safety quickly. That's kind of the main point of having that leash.
Do you have any information on maybe interaction of bears and deer?
So definitely, especially like I said, with fawns, they can be a food resource. Outside of that, they eat the same resources. You may see an adult bear go after a full-size deer, but I'd say there's a lot easier options out there, and primarily they're targeting vegetation. So it's mostly at the fawn level where they use them as a food resource. Sure.
Whatever, so.
Yeah.
All right, y'all, we have time for about 2 more questions. Okay.
We got one in the back.
How about screen doors? Is that safe? Have you heard of bears coming in, like when people are making dinner because they can smell it?
Definitely. So bears in our area have learned to use the paddle style door handles in general. So if you have those, that's why I say keep your doors locked, because they can open those. They can open the car doors, that pulling motion as well. With screens in general, whether it's a window, whether it's a screened in door or your screened in porch, they're big animals. So when they are up and they're leaning against it, investigating, they're probably going to break through that screen, right? It's probably going to give under their weight. So I would not advise trying to secure any sort of attractant on your porch. I also tell people never, again, trust your neighbors, don't trust the bears. Don't leave your windows open when you go to the grocery store. Don't leave your doors open and then walk over to the neighbors, which happens all the time. Just be mindful of that. Don't try to secure any sort of attractant on your porch. Keep your doors locked if you're not going to be right next to them. And then just be aware, it's a pretty escalated situation if you have a bear just walking into homes. You're probably going to know about that bear in the area beforehand because you'll probably see him pretty frequently, but just kind of, again, have that common sense, close your doors, close your windows if you're not right next to them.
Now, I have just one last question. Several years ago, my neighbor was inside and had the doors closed, but then failed to take the bird feeders down. But apparently the bear was on that porch. And do you have in the town, and maybe Mason can answer this, or Tom, are people calling the police to help them out? Or is that a policy that's not a policy, but has that been happening that who do you call if they're really frightened? Is that
There's not necessarily a reason to call if there's a bear on your porch and it's going after your bird feeder. That you just need to bring in your bird feeder. You need to give it some time. I tell people it's kind of similar to those kind of in the movies where there's that sign in a warehouse and it says it's been 5 days since our last incident. Same thing with bears. If you have that bird feeder out and that bear gets into it, clock starts over. Same thing with trash. If the bear gets into your trash, clock starts over. And then you got to build up days, sometimes weeks, sometimes a month, sometimes longer to break that repetition of coming back to that trash can to access the trash. They're going to keep coming back. And as long as it stays closed and they're not rewarded, you can help untrain that behavior. But if it's just a bear on your porch, you just need to change your behavior. You can call us, you can call the helpline, but they're going to tell you everything I told you here today. It's not necessarily, again, we don't relocate bears, so we're not going to come out and get that bear, take it somewhere else. You just need to be a bit more mindful and then communicate with your neighbors as well. Let them know what you experienced. If you know why that bear came up on the porch, let them know so that they can change their behavior as well. Sure. She said, bang some pots and pans, make some noise if it's on your porch, and you can safely try to scare it off.
Okay, this is wonderful. Ashley, thank you so much for coming. We've all learned so much.
you.
And maybe with your help and advice, I'm not done. 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 Thank you. I'd also like to thank the town of Montreat, which is a host this afternoon, and our sponsor, the Montreat Land Care. Thank you so much. Now I'm done.